Aloha, friends. This season of the Voyagers podcast is brought to you by our friend Jonathan Udis, realtor and real estate advisor at Maui Dream Properties. Take it from me, moving to an island can be a challenge. There's a lot to navigate, and the most challenging thing is definitely the real estate market because it's a beautiful island in the middle of the Pacific and that presents its own challenges. You're going to need someone incredibly knowledgeable and trustworthy to help you navigate the ins and outs. So whether buying or selling or investing, Jonathan serves his clients with passion and enthusiasm and excellence. You can trust him to put your family's needs first. So, if you're thinking about moving to one of the most beautiful islands in the world, Maui, Hawaii, check out MauiDreamProperties.com and drop Jonathan a hello and get started on making your dream a reality. I'm David Glenn Taylor, and this is the Voyagers Podcast. About a month ago, I was talking with a friend on Zoom. His name is Struan. He and I get together once a week or so and just talk about the deep things of life. He lives in Scotland, and I'm in Maui, and somehow that works, which still blows my mind. I know it's all normal for everyone now. Anyway, Struan loves to do these long bike rides through the highlands of Scotland, climbing peaks, descending into lush valleys. These are endurance rides, not sprints. So we're talking, and he, knowing I'm from Anchorage, Alaska, says, "Have you ever heard of Lael Wilcox? She's from your town." And no, I hadn't. Oh man, she's amazing. She's the world's greatest ultra-endurance racer, he says. In real time, I Google her, and sure enough, almost that exact headline pops up, and I read a bit, and I'm instantly intrigued. And guess what? She agreed to come on the show. So, this interview is dedicated to my buddy Struan in Scotland, but in the end, as usual, I was the real beneficiary, getting to chat with someone from my hometown and pick the brain of a cycling genius. I love this job. But I saw that you worked at the bicycle shop. Do you still work at the bicycle shop?
No, I don't. Now I actually just get to ride my bike full time.
Oh man.
Is
awesome.
I feel so cool. But yeah, I used to work there, and it's the oldest shop in Alaska.
Oh, I bought bicycles there. I bought my whole family's bicycles there.
I think it opened in 1964. Yeah. The owner is at this point in his late 70s.
Yeah.
Still works every single day of the week.
What was his name?
Mike Shoup.
That's right. I've met Mike a few times. Yeah. Really nice guy.
He went to middle school with my uncle.
No
they
kidding.
Were like neighborhood friends.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
And then Mike opened the shop when he was in his 20s.
Oh, no kidding.
Early 20s. And then it's, running it ever since. I mean, what a cool thing.
So,
and bikes have just exploded in Alaska.
Yeah, it's always so weird to come across somebody whose life kind of so overlaps a little bit. I was thinking I was the chief creative director for the branding of the Anchorage Trail System.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah, they're doing a good job with it now and executing that whole thing. My art team and I, we designed that entire thing, and
so cool.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts to see it and see it. Every once in a while I'll get a photo from a friend on the trail and they'll go, "Hey, a new sign," with all the icons and stuff and the wayfinding system and stuff. It'll come up. They go, "Hey, because it takes a long time." And we designed it. Actually, it was 5 years ago when we really executed the whole thing. So it's
looking so good.
Oh, good.
It's so much easier to get around to. And yeah. Oh my gosh, I love those trails.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in Midtown. So
okay.
It's always the Chester Creek Trail out to the Coastal Trail, and just being on there hundreds of times, just feeling it's just so nice that goes through the middle of town. Yeah. And then there are always moose on the trail. Right. I mean, Anchorage is so amazing. It's just still wild, and more links are coming out now. I saw, I think 3 or 4 this summer. In town.
I've been getting photos from a buddy who lives on the hillside, and he had a lynx in his front yard, and there's enormously beautiful animals. But I was wondering about that in terms of what does that mean that they're coming down into the city?
I know. I know, probably not good.
There will be some future events, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's cool. So you said you grew up in Midtown Anchorage, Alaska.
Fourth generation.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
my
No
grandfather
kidding.
was born in Fairbanks, but then moved to Anchorage when he was a boy. And
Right.
his father was from Fairbanks. And my mom's mom was from Cordova.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah. And when he grew up, it's downtown Anchorage or wooden sidewalks. And there's a
Yeah.
trap line on the park strip.
Yeah.
He told me about when he got his first bike from a Sears catalog. It took like months and months for it to arrive.
Right.
He'd go to the post office every day to check in. It was, I think, $5 or something, $10.
Right.
It's just so Anchorage has changed so much. But yeah, I didn't grow up really riding bikes. I was a soccer player.
No kidding. I saw that you only started the mountain biking thing in 2015.
Yeah, I started riding bikes in 2006 or so. I mean, I knew how to ride. And the thing is, I've never had a car. I don't know how to drive. So a bike first was like my transportation to get to and from work. And then I was like, oh, if I could ride to work, I could ride across the city, and then I could ride to the next city. And then I was like, within a year or two, I was like, I could ride across the country. And I'd never heard of it. This was people had bike touring, but there wasn't really like social media. I didn't have a smartphone. I just never saw it.
Right.
So then I did that. I was like, I graduated college and I rode down the East Coast in like 2 months. And I was like, I just thought this was so cool to like every day you wake up and you're like, I don't know where I'm going to sleep, but I'll just, ride 50 miles, find somewhere to camp and then keep doing it and then see the country like that, and that's how I got started in 2008, started touring. And then I never thought I'd be competing because I never saw biking really as a sport. It was like a way to travel. But then I started, branching out a bit more, like riding around the US and then Mexico. And there I started riding dirt roads because that's what they had. So then I was like, oh, if you have bigger tires and a mountain bike, you can go more places and it's more interesting. It's not just riding gas station to gas station. You're like seeing like the different ways people live and beautiful mountains, and it's harder, but it's like much more interesting. And then I was doing a big tour first in Europe and then the Middle East and South Africa. And it was in the Middle East. I was riding a route that was like a race route, an endurance race route called the Holy Land Challenge in Israel. And I realized I was still going to be there when the race happened. And it was like a 850-mile race. And it's so, even just riding this route is like, goes through the old city of Jerusalem and like all these biblical places, and just it was fascinating. And then I was like, well, I'm still going to be here. I'll just enter the race and see what happens, because you start dreaming like what happens after 200 miles where, it's like, and so much can happen along the way because it's self-supported. You have to carry all your own stuff.
Yeah.
So I entered the race. I just had my very simple touring bike. It was like, I bought it for $400 and I had running shoes and a t-shirt. And I was just like, well, let's just see what happens. And I was the only woman, and they're all like, you're crazy. Like, this is not going to work. Like, I look like a joke to them.
Yeah.
They're like, are you going to be able to make it through the first day? And I was like, well, I don't know. I'll see. And then by the end of the first day, I was winning the race by 25 miles. I just kept throughout that day, I was like, kind of top 10. And then as the night progressed, people just started stopping to eat or to sleep or whatever. And I kept riding until 3 a.m. And then I slept on the side of the road for 3 hours. And then I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. And then I just kept going, and I was just like making this huge gap. And they were like, how is this happening? But the thing is, if you just keep going, that's what happens.
Just keep going. Yeah.
Stop, just keep going. And then I guess that's when I realized like I loved it. And then I was also, I guess I'm good at this. I didn't know, you don't know what you can do until you just do it.
Bicycle.com literally said that you're the best long distance cyclist on the planet. Like,
well,
women.
That's
something else to go. They said it's not even close.
You're the best if you win, right? That's why.
Okay. So let's talk about winning. I mean, you won the 4,200 mile Trans Am race in 2016. You won the Tour Divide win. I mean, you're winning these epic races, and you're beating all of them, the men and the women.
Sometimes. Like the Trans Am, I did, and that was incredible. And then, but the thing is, the race took 18 days, so it's like you don't win until like over 2 weeks later. It is so hard. It's just like it's so hard. And then it's exciting to win, but that's also like part of, the motivating part about racing is that you don't know who's going to win until it happens. Like, lining up with like a bunch of huge guys that look like, superhuman. And then I'm like regular sized. And then I'm like, at this point, because I have experience, I'm like, I'm not intimidated, but nobody would pick me out of the crowd and be like, oh, she's going to win. It just wouldn't
That's
happen.
okay. That's what I'm curious about is nobody would. I totally agree with you. I'm looking at you now. Why do you think that you're so good at it? Like, what's your theory? Honestly, like be like critical for me.
I recover pretty well. It's like, it's you like the Trans Am, for instance, I averaged 237 miles a day for 18 days. And along the way, it's like you have to eat, sleep, take care of your bike. Things happen. And so it's like, the first interesting thing is like, is that even possible to consistently do that?
But
can your body keep going? And then it's like I can recover. Yeah, of course, I experience a lot of pain, but then I actually most of the time want to be out there because it's incredible. You see the whole country. You see like over 230 miles in a day from your bike, geography changes, the weather changes. Like, yeah. That's, people ask me like, aren't you bored? I'm like, no.
Right. When you were first doing it, when you first started kind of just traveling and going up and down the East Coast and doing that kind of stuff, do you have any like specific memories that pop out when you look at, you think back on those times and like that really just was like, that was amazing?
Oh, the first trip started in, I think, September, October. So I basically followed the fall colors south, which is so cool because it's like that's the season of the year in the East when like everything looks really beautiful. But then it was also really cold.
Yeah.
It was like freezing at night. And, I think when I first started, I was like, I've got to connect this whole long route, and like, anything less than that is failure. And now I'm like, nobody else cares. It's like nobody else cares like how you do it. If you want to be out there, you should do it, and if you don't, you should change what you're doing. Like if I'm on a trip and it's like projected 2 weeks of rainy weather coming up, I'm like, well, maybe I can just go somewhere else, because I actually want to be outside. But like you can't do that for a race. Like you just have to deal with whatever comes up. But if it's like it's your own decision, it's your own adventure, make it fun. And I guess that's what keeps me going, because it's like, if it wasn't, why would anybody do this?
Are you aware that now people are doing critical breakdowns of Lael Wilcox and like, how does she do what she does, and trying to figure out what the formula is because they want to replicate it? Have you?
I like that, because like stuff I like, my strategy is like, well, just eat on the bike. So then everybody's like eating French fries while they're riding or whatever. Right. That's pretty scientific.
Yeah. Well, it's so
not like saving time, it's like, right. You can't waste time doing stuff. Some people are taking it to an even like much farther extreme with the sleep deprivation, which is awful. That's the worst part, is not sleeping, but I'll sleep for like 4 hours a night. And some people are sleeping for like 4 hours every 3 nights. Like,
oh wow. And you're still smoking them?
No.
Okay, so that's it. You said you haven't won every race.
Not like people approach it different ways, but then it's like, well, they do that. Like even in the Trans Am, like there were 2 racers ahead of me that were only sleeping an hour a night, and they were like 100 miles ahead of me for the first half of the race. And I was like, I'm such a loser. These people are killing me. But then they totally cracked.
Yeah.
And then they didn't win. And then think about experiencing that kind of sleep deprivation for 2 weeks and then not winning. Yeah. That's terrible, it's like, but yeah, I guess you just have to find what works.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, okay, if I sleep 4 hours a night, I'll be, I'll want to sleep more, but I'll be fine. Like it won't feel like total hell. Mm-hmm. But then if it's a shorter race, I can't do that, because you can't make up the time. It's all about time on the bike.
So Dallas Stevie's a friend of mine, and I had a couple episodes ago where it was a podcast with Dallas.
I met that guy.
No, you have to listen to the episode. It's really good. It was because he's, it's interesting listening to you because you're just managing you, but you're having to be so tuned in to your body, what it needs, especially when it comes to sleep. It was interesting because, talking with Dallas, he was talking about, you're tuned into yourself, but for him, his mind he's completely tuned into his dogs, right? He has to be completely. Yeah.
He invited me to come visit him because he was like, I think you have the closest experience to what my dogs experience.
Yes. So that's exactly what I just thought.
Then I can understand my dogs better.
Yeah, and he's that guy, right? He's like always trying to find like that edge of everything. And he's a super type A kind of like
Oh my
a
God,
technician.
he's so creative though. The
Yes.
solutions, like getting like the cooler to have a treadmill inside of like a shipping container
Yeah.
cooler.
Yeah.
And then everybody started doing it.
Right. I know. Brilliant. It's
It's like,
absolutely brilliant.
that's brilliant. And then he was like trying to reconstruct his sleds. And then
Yeah.
he kept getting like disqualified because he was like, he had space for a dog to rest in the sled.
Uh-huh. Just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
But then they kept like changing the rules on
Uh-huh.
him. And I was like, what? Why? Why don't you want this guy to like do his weird thing and see if it works?
Right. I was talking about like maybe naively thinking, hey, being young would help you. And he was like, no, no, no. And I did it. It's actually, the average age is older because this is really an older person sport because experience is what matters. And I was thinking, is that kind of similar? Do you feel like you're in your physical prime when it comes to, but you're gaining more and more experience and that you're just going to keep getting better at this?
I mean, I think like your body remembers the miles you put on it.
Sure.
As long as you don't get injured, it's like you're used to it. You're like, because I remember the first time I rode through the night, I rode from Anchorage to Homer. And that was my first like overnight ride, 224 miles. And then the day after, I didn't leave until like the afternoon. I got to like Soldotna in the middle of the night. And I would have slept if I'd had a sleeping bag, but I didn't.
Wow.
I was like hanging around.
Sleep.
Did I sleep?
Yeah, at all.
The next day, I waited for the sun to come up and like slept on a gravel road for an hour because it was warmer,
Yeah.
But then like the day after that, my legs were just totally swollen. Like my knees, they were just like, because your body like freaks out. It's like, what'd you just do to me?
Yeah.
Then the next time I did it, it didn't happen because your body's like, oh yeah, I remember that abuse.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Right.
So I think like that, like it's like a physical kind of catalog of experience.
Sure.
Like you just have it, even if you're not in your best fitness, even if I'm not in my best fitness, I could probably still just go ride 400 miles in a go, just because it's like your body remembers. But then, the other like essential thing is recovery. And the older you get, the worse you recover. So
sure.
I think if people had like the confidence to do the distance stuff young, they'd probably get the best results because they're like physically just better. They're just better machines.
Right.
You just have like a better ability to recover day after day in your 20s.
Right.
But all endurance racers, most of them are 40. I don't know. That's optimistic. I mean, I'm 34 now. I'm like, oh, maybe I have a little more time. Yeah. But we'll see. I feel like I'm getting a little faster. I think that's just also because I'm having more fun with it. I didn't think of it as like a competitive sport before. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I was a runner, but I didn't think like, oh yeah, bike racing. Just it seemed weird. It's not very American.
Yeah, that reminds me of another thing that Dallas said, and we were talking about competition itself, and he was talking about how like angst and aggressiveness, or I want to beat that guy. He said that's like a dirty fuel. He said it's not really a sustainable way to do a long distance race. He said, but the love of being out there, and it sounds like that's your fuel.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's like you have like a little tiff with somebody, you're like, I just want to beat that guy. But like in general, I do feel like that's negative. Yeah. Like that can fire you, but only so far. You wouldn't keep doing it for years if that was the reason. It might help you win that single race, but then like, what happens when the next season comes? Do you still feel angry and that's what's getting you out there? I hope not.
Yeah.
That's not good. Project when I first got into distance riding, it was all out of Anchorage, and I'd go out on my days off of work. Working as a server and ride as far as I could. I borrowed my mom's road bike and first took the train to Seward and rode home, and then rode to Homer in a night, and then flew to Fairbanks and rode home in 2.5 days. And I was like, it was the first time I started looking at maps. I was like, where else can I go? And then you quickly realize that there aren't that many roads in Alaska. Like 13 long roads. My
audience members, most of them are in the lower 48, as we call it in Alaska, or we call it the mainland here. They can't understand. It's 2.5 times the size of Texas, and there's no roads. There's like nothing.
These little veins out to so like, why does it even go out there?
Right.
Yeah, but then I was like, I could ride them all. I mean, everybody should just look at a map of Alaska and see like, oh, those are the only places you could access. Right. But they are still remote and cool. So then I was like, one day I'll ride all the roads in Alaska. Something like, I don't know, 4,500 or 5,000 miles. So that was my plan from 2014. I entered my first race that summer, It was a 400-mile road race that you have to finish in a day. And then I came back, I left to travel and started racing. And then I came back in 2017 to do the project and ride all the roads. So just incredible to be out there and see the different land, to go north of the Arctic Circle where there aren't any trees, and you go through the Brooks Range, and it's just magnificent. So many animals. So right after I did that project, I hosted a women's scholarship where I was like, somebody else should have an opportunity to do something like I did, where you get to like go on an adventure in Alaska and see these places. So the idea is that you make a 1,000-mile route in Alaska. Tell me your plan, like when you want to do it, who you are, what your budget is, and how it's going to happen that summer. So between May and September. And then the winner of the scholarship gets all the equipment and a travel stipend to make the trip happen. So I did that in 2018. I had 180 applicants from around the world, ranging in age from 14 to 76 years old. Wow. The 76-year-old is this woman named Judy from Sitka. And she was like, I've never done a bike trip and I just want to do it. She's so cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I did that. And then I actually went back to Alaska this past summer to make a video about the project. And then I was like, well, let's do the scholarship again. Somebody should be able to do this. It's just, for me, I care so much about the state and the land, and like getting to see it on your bike is just this amazing feeling of freedom. So, and also just like the idea of starting to look at maps and make routes and have these adventure dreams, it's like, even if you don't get to get the scholarship, you can like start getting those thoughts going. And then, the thing is, like last time, I ended up giving the scholarship to 3 women, but dozens of them went out and did their rides anyway. They just played to get to Alaska and went for a bike trip, and then they ran into each other on the road, and they're like, oh yeah, I applied for the scholarship too. I didn't get it either, but I'm here, and like they never would have been there. So I think that's the thing, is like, just sometimes you just put stuff out there and then it gets people's minds going and they go do it. And then, then the next, it changes their lives.
Yeah, it's ridiculously inspiring stuff. Like I watched the video on your website about you and Rue, your girlfriend Rue, were out and taking the photos and all the mosquitoes and everything you were dealing with. And I was just kind of blown away by that whole thing. And I spent a lot of time in the Arctic and in Alaska, and I've been up in the Brooks Range and stuff. And so the mosquitoes are no joke.
They're so bad. They're demoralizing.
Yeah. When I was watching the video, I was like, that's the first part I saw you actually, like, that positivity did get hit a little bit, I was going,
it's like, oh
yeah. Do you know who Carl Tobin is?
Yeah.
So Carl, he traversed the Brooks Range years ago, and Patagonia did a whole shoot and everything. They came up and and there was a photo of him on the Patagonia catalog cover. He had his netting on stuff, but he was just trying to make a pocket so he could breathe, because his netting was so coated in mosquitoes that he couldn't breathe. There was no air getting in.
Well, that's the thing. At least on a bike, you're going like 10 miles an hour.
Right.
And you like kind of outride them, but like on foot, you never can.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, man. Oh, I was
people are like, why would anybody want to go there?
Yeah. Except for that, you have that curious, you get to see, the beauty, of course, you can't even, I try and explain Alaska to people, and you just have to go see it. It's impossible to capture in words.
Well, and where it takes your mind when you're actually in a place that's not developed. Right. It's so different, it's like you just like your mind goes into a different like mode. Yeah. There's like, there aren't any power lines. There's nothing out there. Like I was still on a road, which is definitely something. Right. But it feels different. There's a different level of, it's quiet.
You missing Alaska right now?
No.
Tell me about that. Why not?
It's perfect here. There I think they had like Chinook this week, so everything melted and it's icy and it's dark.
I did 15 years. I live in Maui now, and I don't miss the winters at all.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to go to Hawaii. I only went out of high school for a soccer trip.
Can I ask you a couple more questions? I won't take too much more of your time. Where did you serve? What restaurant did you serve at in Anchorage?
I was at that time working at the Rustic Goat, but I also worked at Bernie's Bungalow. Oh my gosh, I cleaned that bar when I was in high school.
Oh,
and then
are
I went
you
back
serious?
to the bartender.
Oh, I used to work in an ad agency down there, so in downtown. So we went to Bernie's all the time.
Yeah, they've got a patio, so you can there are any sunny days, you can hang out there.
Yeah, it was the best.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at a lot of restaurants there. Middle Way Cafe.
Oh, do you know John and Patricia?
John, yeah,
Yeah,
Campobello.
John Campobello. Yeah. Yeah, he's a very good friend. John, they come here all the time. We have dinner. They come up to the house for dinner. They love Maui, so
he has a dishwasher.
Nice.
Then the next year I came back and he was like, well, the baker's quitting, so how about you're the baker this year?
That's classic John.
He's so laid back.
Yeah, he's the best.
Nice guy, though.
Oh, they're amazing. Him and his wife and their whole family, they're incredible people. Yeah. So, last one, I want to know, you must have met along the road, you've probably met some interesting characters. And I wanted to hear just two stories. I want to hear a character story about an interesting person you met on the road. And then the second one was worst bike wreck story.
Oh, God.
Can I hear a bike wreck story?
Yeah. So I scouted this route down the Baja Peninsula called the Baja Divide, 1,700 miles, almost entirely dirt. And some of it's really loose. And I was going down this descent. It crosses back and forth between Pacific Ocean and the Sea of Cortez 8 times through all the mountain ranges.
Wow. It's
super pretty. But I was getting down to the Pacific for the first time. It's like these crashing waves. I was so excited. I was like, all right, I'm just going to go for it. And usually I'm very cautious descending just because if I get hurt, then I'm out, you know, and I hate being injured. But I was like, I should just be a little gutsier. And I was descending and I hit this super soft patch of sand and it stopped my front wheel like dead. And then I just was ejected over the back and flew out of the saddle. And I heard my back just crack in the air. It was like 4 cracks and I hit the ground and it kind of knocked me out. I came to and my tire had ripped off the rim. It was just like such a crazy impact, just from that force. And I was basically wanted just to go back to sleep, but I had to kind of come to. My mouth was just caked in sand, but I was in the middle of nowhere. So I had to get to the next town because I didn't even, there's no water, there's nothing. So I get back up, fix the tire, ride to the next town. And I was like, man, I'm really in a lot of pain, but there's not really much of an option here besides just taking a day off and then moving on. And I didn't do anything about it. I was just sore. And then a year later, I fell while I was mountain biking and I broke a couple of ribs, which is totally debilitating. Yeah. But ribs just hurt so bad. So I went and got an x-ray from a friend and he was like, your ribs are broken, but I'm more concerned about your vertebrae. And it was in the x-ray, there was you could tell that I'd broken my back.
Oh my goodness.
A year before. That's the thing is if you don't get it checked out, that doesn't change what it is. You just don't know.
Wow. So that's a really debilitating injury. Do you still feel that one?
No, but I think, there's still evidence. It's skeletons in the closet.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So I broke my back, I didn't even know it. But the crazy thing is that breaking your ribs hurts so much more. Right. There's a difference between pain and injury.
Yeah. And that Baja Divide, is that a race now that they're doing on that route?
No, you could do a time trial. So I went afterward and set a record on the route in 11 and a half days. Jeez. And then another guy that used to live in Alaska, Pete Basinger, went and beat my time by an hour and a half.
He did. He did. And you haven't beaten it back yet.
I haven't gone back because it was so painful. But 11 and a half days and then an hour and a half. I'm like, that's
wow.
Minutes.
Jeez, that's
yeah, definitely the worst injury.
Okay, I get it. And then I get one character story.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the Baja Divide, and then all the characters out there.
Right.
A lot of Alaskans go down to Baja. There used to be a guy named Coco, and he was actually on the map. It was Coco's Corner. And this guy set up his own place in the intersection of 2 dirt roads. And he decorated the whole thing with colorful beer cans. And when I met him, he had he was missing both the bottom parts of both of his legs from diabetes. And all he had at his place was beer and Coke. And he just had these little knee pads and he would just scoot around to get to his 4-wheeler to like drive across his property. But like he was like an oasis in the middle of nowhere because there's nothing else. But I mean, I feel like Baja's like full of these characters because they're like, there's really nothing out there.
Yeah.
There are more roads, but there's less water, and it's really, I mean, it's not really developed at all.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like you ride these dirt roads out, and then like if there is anybody out there, you're like, why are you here? There was another guy, Poncho, who just had like a little surf shack on the beach, and like he would just go fishing. All these people have like their little pets, like cats and dogs, and that's all they do, you know. But then if you like end up passing by, you have to stop and visit for like half a day because you're like their guest, your visitor, you know. It's like your old family. I feel like that's similarity with Alaska too. It's like you meet all these people that just live out there, and then they're just so happy to have company.
What's next for you? What's the next race on the docket for you?
Oh man, I don't know. It's so weird right now. You know, I was supposed to go to Rwanda a couple weeks ago for a race around Rwanda, 1,000 kilometers.
Holy cow.
And it seemed like it was going to happen. Their COVID cases were super low, and it was like safe to travel, and then things just got worse again. So
have you been to East Africa or sub-Saharan Africa at all?
No. I've only been to South Africa and Egypt. I was like very optimistic about travel, and now I'm like, I think it's going to be a year.
So we're in travel, right? Because we have this boat and we do tours and things like that. So we're very plugged into all the data on travel. And so we are seeing a huge spike in travel and tourism to Hawaii starting in April. And then our summer bookings are kind of going through the roof. So there's a lot of the travel confidence index, which is a big thing in travel tourism, is going way up. And you're seeing it really go up in April. The vaccines and everything, but also just the news that's coming out with the new plan and with the Biden administration and stuff like that. There's a lot of confidence. I'm excited.
I hope so. Yeah, I really want to go to Europe in like late May. I have a race there I've done before, the Hope 1,000 kilometers.
Where's that from?
100,000 feet of climbing in Switzerland.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's so hard, but it's also so beautiful. Switzerland is so beautiful.
You raced that one before though?
Yeah.
How'd you do?
I got second.
Yeah, second place.
4 days, 5 hours. I slept like 9 hours for the entire thing.
Oh my goodness.
But I mean, it's Switzerland, you know, it's like everything, life is actually easy there. It's like fresh water everywhere, great food, you know, beautiful sights. I mean, it was warm enough that I didn't have to bring pants. I just wore shorts, you know, I mean, so I'm like dreaming of, I mean, and then also that's like, I love traveling in Europe because it's not like Alaska where it's so remote. It's like every village has a bakery. The easy life for distance riding, that's pretty nice. But yeah, hope to go back to Europe for that. But I do feel like I'm trying not to get my hopes up about travel just because I had to cancel so much.
Yeah. You would have to cancel a lot. I mean, we had one trip in one little family vacation that we were taking to France. Like we were literally leaving 2 days before the lockdown happened. And yeah, it was brutal because the kids we were going to road trip West Coast and just hit a bunch of villages and stuff. And the kids were really excited. You would have had to, I mean, since this is what you do for your job, essentially now, you would have had to just wipe the whole thing clean. That would have been hard.
I did. That's why we went back to Alaska.
Yeah.
Because then, like, well, if you're riding in the middle of nowhere by yourself in Alaska, you're not going to get COVID.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Crazy. I really, really appreciate you taking the time.
Great talking with you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Lael.
Bye-bye.
Bye. There's a video on Lael's website about her adventures riding the roads in Alaska. And in it, she says this.
2020 comes around. We have a calendar full of projects and races, and then COVID happens and everything gets canceled. And then we realize, well, this is actually an opportunity just to go home and ride from home and actually do this project and ride together and show everybody what it looks like. And also that even when you're limited in a time where everything feels shut down and closed and there's no community events, you still have this freedom to go out by yourself or with a close friend and have your own experience. and not worry about results, just worry about being there and what that's like.
It's something we can all do. It's something we should all do. I'm inspired. So let's get out and ride, or walk, or run. Let's shake off 2020. Leave it behind on the road. We don't need to carry it with us. We might need to eat while we're riding, like Lael, maybe stuff some French fries in the saddlebag, but we sure as hell don't need to bring 2020 with us. The Voyagers podcast is produced by Sugar Sled Productions and recorded in Kula on the island of Maui. It's hosted by me, David Glenn Taylor. You can read a ton about Lael's adventures and that amazing scholarship she created at laelwilcox.com, or you can follow her on Instagram. Or you can just do like I did and Google best ultra-endurance cyclist in the world. Her name is at the top of the list. How cool is that? My heartfelt thanks to Lael for spending some time with me, and good luck to her on her next race whenever and wherever that might be. We'll be following and cheering you on. Hopefully it's soon. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. It's really appreciated. You can support the podcast through Patreon by going to www.voyagerspodcast.com and clicking on the Patreon link. And if you'd like to sponsor, just email us at david@voyagerspodcast.com. Next week, we're going to get a little deep. In fact, we're going to take a deep turn for the next few weeks on the Voyagers. We've got a handful of guests coming up that are going to stretch our minds, our spirits, and teach us a few things about ourselves and our world. First up, Joshua Harris, who is the head of a branding consultancy in Vancouver, British Columbia. But in his former life, he was the pastor of one of the largest evangelical churches in America. He even offered a few books that sold millions of copies, guiding Christians through doubt to certainty about what they believed. But that was then. Now Joshua is working his way through his own doubts, and the journey is filled with uncertainty, and some frustration, and some wonder. That's next week on the Voyagers podcast. Mahalo for listening, friends.